We have Liz Deering with us in this episode. She is one of the co-founders of The Unink with Ben Gibson. You might have heard her name before in the first podcast episode of this show. She has a background being a creative, most recently has specialized in creating spaces to help especially underrepresented groups of people create freely, create social impact businesses. In her own words, what she's great at is holding spaces. That's a really important thing, and we'll get into why that's important in this episode. So please enjoy this episode with Liz Deering. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having
the
me.
podcast in person this time.
Yeah, it's cool to see you in real life.
Yeah, I can actually see you this time. Last time the sun was setting, and it was getting real dark, and it was weird.
And we had this flashlight, and it was like, what?
It was so sketchy.
Yeah, so please don't use this video.
Yeah, I was like, I won't use the video.
It's
You guys sounded good, though. A lot of people commented on how good it sounded, and I was like, oh, really? It was all over the phone, so
It did sound really
this
good.
one's going to sound even better, minus the airplanes flying overhead. But
It'll be good.
So, Liz, give me the short explanation of who you are and where do you come from?
Okay. Well, my name is Liz Deering, and I hail from the great state of Michigan, originally.
Whoa, north.
North. I am not a cold weather girl, but I do love the state of Michigan. I haven't lived there in a long, long time, but that's my roots. I am the co-founder of The Unink and co-creator of all sorts of creative things. I think my biggest sense of identity comes from holding space for people to create, or holding space for people to find themselves. And that looks like a lot of different things.
Because that's what you've done before The Unink too, right?
Yeah, I don't think I ever, formalized it into a business before The Unink.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so before we started The Unink together, I started a business called Haven that was focused on women and helping them pursue their intent with their business. So creating a space where they felt like they could explore the intent and the softness of their mission, not just the business end of things, which of course everybody needs to make it sustainable and all that. But it's very hard to find a space where you can be honest with yourself about where it's coming from, where these ideas are coming from, why is it so hard, and really work through that stuff. So that was my original concept for Haven, which has evolved into and kind of been enmeshed into this brand of Unink over time.
How did that go? Like the Haven, you did have some cohorts. Is that what you were calling them? Or is that what that was?
It was called a cohort, like a group.
Yeah.
Kind of like a gaggle of geese.
I got called a gaggle in high school once by a state trooper because we were all walking to the Sheets.
Nice.
It's a gas station in Pennsylvania. And there was like 20 of us, and he was like, "You're not a gang because you don't look threatening, so I'm going to call you a gaggle." It was the first time I ever heard that word.
It's funny.
Yeah.
I like plural words. They're fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a cohort is a gathering of entrepreneurs. I had a few of them. I started out Haven actually doing various workshops and focusing on different topics that I thought would be helpful and bringing in mentors and trying to learn what people wanted. And over time, it evolved into this concept of a cohort. So, yeah, I ran a few cohorts before Ben and I launched The Unink together. And, we actually opened a space together, and we're both running our separate brands.
Under the same...
In the same building before we started Unink.
What were the workshops focused on? What was the workshops that you were doing for the...
Yeah, so I started out with a bunch of them. I did a workshop on scrappy marketing. I did, which is so important because everyone wants you to just spend money on marketing. But
yeah.
I focused on how to build relationships and partnerships to build marketing. We did one that was on speed coaching. So we actually had a bunch of experienced business coaches come in, and everyone got 30 minutes with a coach and got to experience what that feels like to be coached by somebody. We did yoga, which is still a big part of what I want to do in the future with the Unink. Because yoga is a very good way of getting back into your center.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurship.
And into your body.
And into your body.
In the
yeah.
now.
We tend to get all up in our heads, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, that was an exploration of what happens if you expose entrepreneurs to that.
Are you familiar with 10% Better?
Mm-mm.
Can't remember the guy's name. He's a NBC Nightline anchor, and he wrote the first book that was about meditation and included the word fuck.
Oh my God! How have I not read this?
It's awesome. And he's got a
of
podcast now too, and his new book is called Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. But the whole thing is like how those practices can be practically used in Western culture. Because for me, like yoga's never been my thing, but meditation really has been, and it's been life changing. And I don't say that lightly. Like between that and journaling, like stoicism, journaling, those two things have been the things that have allowed me to really take control of my own thoughts and emotions, which then allows you to take control of the businesses you're trying to run.
You get this reflection cycle that you wouldn't get otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Because you're pausing and you're noticing your thought, but you're also aware of yourself more, and you can move from a different place.
And there were certain times when I was making films, back when I remember when I was making my first big web series and I was producing it. So I was pulling together all the pieces of it, and we had 2 filmmakers coming to help us shoot this big day of filming. And the night of, I was texting them to make sure that they were all good, like to see what equipment they were bringing. And they were like, oh, actually, we got a gig in Pittsburgh and we're not going to be able to make it.
No.
And it was like, oh, that. And I remember like sitting, like just sliding down the wall in that cliche movie like moment. And I was just like so defeated and like just felt this total. But then I like took a deep breath and it was, okay, I can't change the fact that they can't come. What can I do? Yeah. Which that has become always, and then I found out later that that's the Stoicism motto, which gave me a language and a method to really implement that. But that was like a pivoting moment in my life of like, okay, I'm not going to be someone that just gets pushed around by circumstances.
Yeah.
And that's huge as a business owner. I mean, you're never going to succeed otherwise. Like
you always have to have a direction, because people will not help you without that.
The universe will push you around.
It will.
I was talking to Ben and I was saying how it will punch you in the face and you have to learn how to take those punches and use that experience to shift you, which obviously is like difficult, right?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I think I have a very different perspective on it, although I wonder if it's like a perception of like what the universe is or something. But I have this sense of like, well, it definitely slaps you in the face sometimes, but I have this sense of always knowing there's something I don't see, or always knowing there's more.
Yeah.
And journaling is like, for me, journaling has been part of my,
there's a thread that you're like following. The universe is laying a path out for you, whether you know that that's what it is or not.
You can see it in your own writing. Right, like you can see these threads back in time.
Yeah.
Only if you've been writing for a long time, especially, you can see how actually the same you are. Even though you've grown and even though you've gone through all this crazy stuff, you can see like these pieces of like who you truly are from the very beginning.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like for me, journaling's another part of the Unink that I have been really excited about creating, and I've journaled since I was in 6th grade, like pretty much every day.
Yeah.
I just am obsessed with journaling because it's me connecting to myself.
Right.
It's like how I know myself, and also how I've become a writer and how I've developed a voice.
Do you have like a methodology you use for journaling, or is it just kind of free flowing, or do you kind of do both?
I go back and forth. When I was first learning it, I kind of had different methodologies I tried. Mm-hmm. Now I keep it very free flowing because I also write for the sake of my business. I write for other purposes, and those things have structure. So for me, when I write in the morning, it's like I look forward to this idea that there is no structure.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I just pick up the pen and.
I think it's important to have both of the. I mean, that's like a creative outlet. It's important to have a creative outlet. For me,
it's great.
My creative outlet that I don't have any expectation for. It was painting, but then people started liking my paintings and inviting me to shows and stuff. So now that's a business. But music, I'm not good enough at music that anyone's ever going to like want me to be in their band. So I could play my ukulele, I could play my guitar, and just completely be engrossed in that creative process.
That's awesome.
Without any expectation of like this is going anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's just for me. And sometimes I'll record it and put it on my Instagram or something stupid like that. But
See, I think that continues to evolve. I was just talking to someone about this the other day. I was saying, so I've noticed the last couple of years, like I've been so heavily involved in creating for the purpose of the brand that we've built that I stopped letting myself create for other purposes, right? Like I'm just like so obsessed with what we're making, everything from, the Unink logo to the website to everything on social media to like every piece of, I guess, just sort of visual of what we're doing has become part of what I do. And I love that, but then it kind of, to a certain point, started to feel like heavy. And so I was talking to a friend of mine and saying like, I don't know what this is about, and as I was talking, I was realizing what it's about is I need to, again, remind myself to like play.
Yeah.
Find a way to play. And so
that's such an important part
of it. I decided like, okay, I'm going to play. And what that version of that right now looks like for me, it's probably different than it'll look in another year, right?
Mm-hmm.
But right now it looks like I'm working on my podcast and asked a friend of mine to help write the track that's like the opener. And all it's a very small collaboration in theory, right?
Yeah.
It's just a little piece of this creative puzzle, but then something happened when I asked, like when I said, hey, I'm trying to make this thing feel a certain way. Can you make it feel that way?
Yeah.
And so I you might have seen the thing that I recorded that was just like this beta with Ben about my podcast. I just sort of like quickly said, let's try something. And all that was trying to start setting the tone. So I'm not a musician at all. I just love music, but I don't know anything about how to create it, right? And so I recorded the beta on the porch at sunset with dogs, with wine, kind of like we were when we recorded with you.
Yeah.
I thought there's something magical about this sunset time, and I wanted to capture that. Yeah, golden hour. And that's when I want these episodes to feel like, right?
Right.
So anyway, he listened to that. My friend Joanne listened to that, and he said, okay, I listened to it. Tell me what this is about. And I said, well, I want people to like drop into this feeling of sunset and the like colors and the kind of possibility of it all. Well, he just went to this whole other creative realm and started imagining like what that scene felt like.
Yeah.
And by the time I left his house, he had like written a poem about it. And then I wrote a poem about his poem, and now he's writing the music, and this whole thing is happening that's taking on a life of its own. And it's so fun because this podcast is part of my brand, but it's like completely play right now.
Yeah,
like,
right.
It feels like this free.
That's where I'm at with both of the podcasts
so
that I'm
great.
working on. Is like that's my outlet of play.
Yeah.
And it's like I've figured out how to make those outlets of play still part of my brand, so I don't feel so unproductive playing, but I'm also like allowing it to just be its own thing and not have to like, there's really very little objective behind it besides just getting a chance to sit down and talk to cool people.
I love it. Yeah.
Like that's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
And I realized at one point I was like, why the hell am I not just having a podcast? Because I just like to sit around and talk to people
You're doing it anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
I might as well record it and share it, and other people, and you scale it too. Then I noticed I end up having the same conversation over and over again, and that's the kind of stuff that I would like make videos about. And then those videos would be, reach a decent amount of people. I look at a video, and if it's reached 250 people, I mean, I have videos that have reached 20,000. I have a few old video game videos that have reached a couple million,
Nice.
and it's like, but they're not. It's weird. Those ones don't have a message that I really care about sharing, but like. The ones that have reached like 500 views and it's something I really care about are the ones I'm really stoked about because I'm like 500 people. Like imagine 500 people sitting in this room right now. That's a lot of people.
500 people like
even 50 people
heard what
like,
you're saying.
Yeah, even if 50 people were sitting in this room and like listening to
it would be meaningful.
Yeah.
Actually, if just one person heard it, it would be meaningful. True, what I've been thinking about with Every Fucking Sunday is this sense of, how we often listen to podcasts.
To preface, that's the name of your show.
Yes.
Yeah, you didn't say
my podcast is called Every Fucking Sunday.
I like that, yeah.
And every fucking Sunday, I just love to swear for starters, and fuck is the best swear word ever.
Yes.
I mean, that's just my opinion, but
I agree. Yeah.
It's fantastic. And Every Fucking Sunday is about this discipline it takes to keep showing up to pursue something meaningful. And I know that a lot of us listen to podcasts alone, right?
Right.
In a car, in your headset, by yourself. So I'm not creating a podcast for like a group in my mind. Although I hope that lots and lots of people listen to it. I am creating it for the one listener that is like, I really needed to be inspired today, or I really needed to hear that. And
someone
then
gave me that.
Someone
gave me that piece of advice. Someone that I know that's a pretty successful podcaster, and they do like video game streaming and stuff like that, and they're really successful at it. And they said, when you're talking to the quote unquote audience, talk to one person, because there's just a bunch of one people out there listening, and it's like, so don't say you guys or everybody. Don't say everybody listening. Say you.
That's what that's interesting that he said that. I just naturally didn't like the feeling of talking to the group.
Right.
Because it didn't feel personal enough.
Yeah.
I want to be talked to as a listener, like as the one person.
Right. Yeah. No, you totally are onto that same thing. Like,
that's cool.
I think he just kind of naturally discovered that too over time. He's a pretty like one-on-one type of person. And it was like, I get to have a bunch of one-on-one like conversations basically this way.
Oh, and I love
then the great thing is whenever they talk back. That's what I love, whenever I'm getting feedback back. Then it turns into a dialogue rather than just a monologue.
And it's not a monologue either, because you're having a dialogue with somebody else. So you know, they're like listening into your one-on-one conversation, and then they're having a one-on-one kind of experience of it. But it can grow bigger, and I think that's, I don't know, as a person that just must create, I know there's certain things that spark that, you know, like. And sometimes you just fall into them, and you're like, "What is this? What is it? It's making me create." You know, and that's
you get so much energy from. One of my big pieces of advice for other creators and for myself is just create more. At one point, I was doing a whole thing where I was trying to create something every day, 365 creations for the year, and I did it. It was 2017. I did that. And whether it was a video for my YouTube channel, a lot of it was that, or a painting, or a short story, or something. I was trying to create something and finish it and upload it to the internet. That's what kept me accountable. Not necessarily to be like, oh, look at what I did. It was more of like, I need to be accountable to myself.
You finished it.
So I like, this is done, moving on to the next thing. And that was like crazy. A lot of people think you run out of creativity, and it's the opposite. It's like the more you create, the more you like create. The more you create, the more you create. That's like
and the more like authentic it becomes, I think, too.
Yeah, and you build the skills, you get better, you make better art. I think a lot of people get frustrated early on because people aren't resonating with the art that they're making, whether it's paintings or whether it's filmmaking or whatever. Filmmakers especially, because I know you're putting a ton of work into this thing, and it sucks when it's just not. You see what it's supposed to be, and either you get so down because you realize that it's not as good as you want it to be, or you're a little egotistical about it and think that it's this amazing thing. You don't understand why people don't understand it, right?
Yeah, it just hasn't hit that level.
But either way, it's like you just haven't gotten to the point where you're good enough yet.
And also, I think it's because, you know, and this goes for everything from like a piece of visual art to a business concept. Like you can't create it to get the reaction and be authentic, I think. You know what I mean? You can definitely make reactions happen, but the expression of yourself that just kind of flows and you're not trying to make something happen in a specific way is different. And I think that's part of like the practice of becoming a creator is like learning how to just roll with your own flow and not worry if people like it or don't like it. Like I'll look at stuff that I've posted and I'll think, that got 3 likes. Like, what does that mean about me, right? And I start to like overanalyze it.
I think we all do that because the data is there for us to analyze. It's like easy
as if it really quite means value, right? Like there's something.
That's what I was telling you with the metrics on these podcasts. Like I don't look at them because I don't want. I pay attention to what types of content or comments I'm getting, what types of emails I'm getting in response.
Yeah.
But I don't care necessarily how many people, and it's not like, oh, I don't care how many people are watching because I'm so above that. It's like it's genuinely just not an important metric for me.
How does it help you, right?
The engagement is really what's important to me. It's like what if there's a topic people keep asking about, I'll do more of that topic. And if there's a topic people are like, that was dumb, don't cover that again. If I feel like it, I'll still cover that. You know, like screw them.
Screw that. Yeah.
There's gonna be enough episodes that you can just skip that episode. Come on.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think I've been trying to shift my mind about this with our business too. So, you know, for 2 years we did cohorts for entrepreneurs, and these are, you know, very structured in the sense of like 3 months, 4 to 8 people. Everyone goes through the same process. The goal is to launch something by the end. after about 6 months ago, we put a pause on it and we like started trying to figure out what needed to change. Something was just not working quite right, even though everybody has said like, this was a valid, like a good experience. There's nothing, I think, innately wrong with the thing we created. It's more of like something's off in the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I think I've discovered over the 6 months of not doing it is, for starters, I really miss it. And I miss facilitating it.
Yeah.
And I miss watching people grow, and I want to do more of it. But I don't miss is the feeling of trying to sell it. And it's like selling your own art, right?
Right.
And so I've started reimagining it. And, Ben and I spent a lot of time talking about what is the next evolution of this. And I'm pretty excited about it because I think something's happening with me as I let go of it a little bit. Like,
yeah.
You hang on so hard because you made it and it's your baby and you're like, this is the thing. Why isn't it selling, quote unquote? And so this time what I'm going to try, I'm still kind of cooking it, but what I'm going to try in the new year is, well, two things. I want to treat, it's called Unink Life. We called it this a while back because we thought this is about the lifestyle of creating and making change and like being entrepreneurial. It's not a one point in time, where you're like, oh, now you're an entrepreneur. Like,
right. Yeah.
Oh, now you're an artist. Like, no, it's a path and it's like a becoming that happens. Right. So we called it Unink Life, as in it's a practice. But the thing that I want to kind of embrace more in the new year is to treat the way that we're equipping people, treat it the way that a yoga studio treats yogis. And the inspiration for this comes from like 15 years of yoga for me.
Yeah.
Yoga's been this like center point for me of coming back to myself. And it's also been the only reliable place where when I walk into a studio, somebody else is holding space for me.
Right.
Whereas in my work, I hold space for others. And when I go into the studio, it's held, for me. So I want to kind of take inspiration from that in thinking about, instead of trying to structure these cohorts and say, okay, everybody, it starts on, this date and ends on that date, sign on up.
Yeah.
I want to structure it like, we are always here. The yoga studio is always there, right?
Mm.
In the 10 years I've lived in Austin, like Black Swan Yoga has always been there. And it's gotten bigger. It's opened more studios. It's gone from like really scrappy to really nice. It's still donation based and it's still always there. With Unink Life, I want to treat it like a yoga studio in the sense that there are certain days of the week and times of day that Unink Life is open. And you come when you need that space. And you don't come when you don't need it. And you give what you can to help support it,
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm probably going to start really small with like once a week, one time a week. But I don't know what's exactly going to happen. But I think the thing that I think I've done the most effectively is hold the space in the last couple of years. And the thing that has been counter to that is forcing people to appear in space at certain times.
Yeah,
and so I'm going to see what happens if I do something totally different.
I'm really bad at appearing in places at certain times. And like that's been a constant struggle of my life. So I can like, there's things I wouldn't sign up for that are like, oh, you have to like, even just as much like webinars, right? Like if they're like, you have to be here this time. And it's like,
you're like, well, I really don't feel like it right now.
Like, just record it and send it to me and I'll watch it when I can.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But I do think
I want people to come and get it when they need it.
Yeah, the space thing is, you talk about that a lot, and I really haven't thought about that too much. But that is, I used to work as a co-working space which is now more of a co-op in Pittsburgh called Work Hard Pittsburgh. And it used to be this old hardware store and now they've expanded quite a bit. But and they have like a studio space in the basement, and like it was such an amazing just like space to create. What was really important was that there was a space that everyone could gather and share ideas and like meet like-minded people.
Yeah.
And have the resources too. We'd all share resources, right?
Totally.
Like print shop would make murals and stuff for the new businesses that were popping up that were being funded through the grant program at the work.
It's such a big deal. There's lots of spaces. You could go kind of drive into any city and find coffee shops or co-working spaces. Very few of them are community driven, like in the sense of when you walk in the space, you feel like there's an intent to connect with others.
Yeah.
Because our culture is so kind of siloed, right? We're all walking around in our heads, and then we walk into a coffee shop and put our headsets in and type and work, and So it's very hard to find those. I think those spaces are more common now as co-working is growing up. Like co-working is kind of more of a teenager than it used to be, right?
Yeah.
It used to be a baby as a concept. So I think spaces with resources are a big part of it. I also think it has to do with the humans that hold those spaces.
Yeah.
Because somebody has to have the tenacity to say no to some things and yes to others. Like, as you're trying to even talk about this place in Pittsburgh, like you have to sustain the space.
Yeah.
You have to, have enough humans in the space.
Yeah, I mean, and,
you have to make decisions
and Josh
about that,
Lucas,
right?
the guy that originally was running it, now it's a cooperative, but man, he was crazy stressed keeping that place alive as long as he did.
Yeah.
I find that interesting, though, what you're saying about, I don't remember who wrote about this, the third space.
Mm-hmm.
You have your home and you have your workspace, and your third space is like this human need for this communal space. And I find myself when I go to coffee shops and things trying to be more intentional about opening myself up to interactions, which is funny because now in the last just 3 weeks, like every time I go to the coffee shop, any coffee shop, even in the middle of nowhere, I end up striking up a conversation, meeting someone, adding them on Facebook, like becoming friends with a random person.
Because you're open to it.
And and it's not easy because like everyone else is kind of like not sure.
Yeah.
Like there's like with coffee shops especially, there's like they're like, are you working? Like, I see you have a laptop. Like, should I just not talk to you?
Totally.
So you kind of have to really put your best foot forward and be like, make eye contact and say, hey.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You have to make eye contact with people. That's the only way.
I make eye contact and give them a really energetic, hey. and it's crazy. And then it was like, hi.
You can start a conversation off anything. I was in a coffee shop the other day, and I have all these stickers on my laptop, and they're all from like the last 2 years. I kind of just like carefully curated them, you know what I mean? I'm not just putting random stickers on my laptop. These are like businesses that I'm excited by or things that inspire me or whatever. And one of them is Meow Wolf, and Meow Wolf Denver is like opening up, and so I'm connected to the folks that are helping launch it, and I stuck the sticker on my laptop on purpose to see what would happen, right?
Yeah.
So I'm at this coffee shop and I have my stuff set up, and I see this guy looking for a place to put his stuff, So I just looked up. Like, I didn't really try that hard. I just kind of looked up and made eye contact, and he looked at me and looked at my laptop and looked back at me and said, "Can I ask you a question?" And then he started asking me about Meow Wolf.
Yeah.
And took a seat next to me, and we started talking about things, and that's what I love about, like a really soft kind of space coffee shop that feels like that can happen.
Yeah.
Like you might just share a table with somebody and you might have a conversation you never would have had, and
yeah,
I love that.
If there are creators out there, and I mean, I use the word creator like super loosely. Obviously, this podcast is primarily what am I saying? What, my brain just like totally went dead.
I think you just hit like maximum coffee input. Like you just can't.
No, okay, so this podcast. This podcast thing, okay?
This podcast.
It's a thing, and it's geared towards the people, No, but it's primarily geared towards filmmakers.
Mm-hmm.
But I want it to be accessible and make sense for a wide variety of people. But for people that are still starting out, still struggling to turn their creative passion into something that's not even a living, but a feasible part of their living, is there a piece of advice that you'd give generally to people that are on the ground floor?
Well, I don't love general advice because it's not specific enough to the human. But I would say I can kind of place myself back in that, moments in time where I've begun things, begun ideas or had the guts to try to start something. I think the most important mindset to kind of try on for size at that stage is that you have what you need. Not to think, oh God, let me compare myself to someone that I'm inspired by and therefore intimidated by, or not to say, if only I had more experience, or if only I had more money, or if only I had more collaborators. Like, you are not going to get to do any of those awesome things unless you just start. And to really actually try to internalize the concept that you have what you need, because otherwise you wouldn't have this idea. Like, this idea, whatever it is, came to you because you have what it takes to take the next step.
Right.
So just take it.
Wow. Yeah, I know. I think people need to get out of their own way.
Yeah,
a
we're
lot.
all in our own way.
Yeah.
And we need people
myself, too.
around us to
Yeah.
tell us, right? People that I trust the most in my life will tell me that I'm in my own way.
We got to try things because you got to see if it clicks or not. Things will click that you don't think are going to click, and then
that's how
things that
you
you
learn
think are
what
going to
works.
click won't.
Yeah.
And that's how you learn. So instead of sitting around trying to write the perfect script before you like put together the perfect crew for the perfect movie for your first film, that's the most absurd thing that I've ever
doing it, yeah.
make a freaking film and then see what happens now, or make a short film if a feature film's too much, or a web series, or whatever your thing is. Just make the thing, and then make some more of the thing, and just keep making the things.
It's like your craft, right? You get better at it.
Yeah, and that's we talked about this, and like a lot of times when you're starting out, you might have great ideas, but your execution's bad.
Yep.
Really bad.
Yep.
And everybody that's made anything has been there.
We have all been there.
You can't change the fact that you can't change the things you can't change.
Yeah.
And then you just got to go from there.
Totally.
All right. Is there anything you want to leave people with, and where can they find you?
Well, I would leave people with let yourself play more.
Oh, okay. That's nice.
In whatever it is you want to work on. And how they can find me, I'm super accessible. I'm on Instagram. Endearing is my name on Instagram. The letter N, Deering. They can also follow the Unink Life on Instagram or Facebook. Always love to talk to people. Always love to learn about their creative process. Love to be part of it. So I welcome people reaching out for any particular reason.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode of Movies in the Black. This was a really awesome conversation with Liz. If you haven't listened, there was a conversation I recorded at the same time as this one with Ben Gibson. That was a few episodes ago. There's also some really great episodes that we've released recently. One with Katie Sietta, one with Scott Sullivan. There was one a while back that we did with Kevin Interdonato that I saw not very many people listen to that one for some reason, and that was one of the really, really good ones. Has a lot of quality stuff that's specifically related to producing films. So go check those out. If you're listening on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube, wherever, you can easily go back and watch the backlog. One of the big things that has been helpful to grow the audience of the podcast has been a few people sharing the podcast episodes they like in the groups that they are in Facebook. So if you're in a group in Facebook and you like this show, that would be awesome if you would share it there. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week with an interview from Ryan Haggerty that I actually split into 2 episodes. So we'll have one episode next week and then one episode the week after that. The one next week specifically is about making Blood on the Leaves, raising money from investors, and the business side of a micro-budget film and distribution through Amazon. The one after that will be about freelance. He's a very successful freelancer, so that will be 2 really, really valuable episodes for you. Thanks for listening. See you next week.